Welcome, everyone. Hi. On this gray Friday afternoon, a perfect day to spend some time talking about angels. I'm Jane Fleischman, and I am a proud member of the Northampton Neighbors Speakers Committee, and I am delighted to be with all of you today. We've got a great guest with us. You know, Northampton Neighbors' mission is to help older adults in our community create and maintain connection, independence, dignity, and joy as we all age. But here's the most important word, and engage in place. Northampton Neighbors is free of charge and open to all, offering a range of social and volunteer opportunities, as well as services and support for members 55 and over in Northampton, Florence, and Leeds. We now have 1,501 members, thanks to Sarah Lennox for looking that up for me today. Amazing. And we are always looking for new volunteers. So please let us know if you're interested in helping out. It's really a blast and it is a lot of fun. You get to know great people. Now on to our wonderful guest. I'd like to introduce you to our guest speaker today, Sophy Burnham. Hi, Sophy.
Hello, everybody. Am I unmuted and you can hear me?
You're perfect. Let me tell you all a little bit about our guest. Sophy is the author of 15 books that have been translated into 26 languages, including 2 New York Times bestsellers, and she's given numerous talks on TV in the US and abroad. Her topic for today is Angels and Ghosts I Have Known. She's going to talk about the difference between an angel and a spirit or a ghost, and why they appear at some times and not others. Why more to women than men, and more to children than adults. I'm so excited to have you here with us today. And remember, you all will have time for your questions after Sophy's presentation. Sophy, it's all yours.
Thank you so much. I am so honored to be allowed to talk to you all. And I guess what I'm really going to do is to say that what I want to do is to discuss this subject. The fact of the matter is I know very, very little about it. I've written some books about it, 5, I think. I had my life saved by an angel. I have seen many ghosts and I've seen a number of angels. And I've come in the course of my life to believe in them, but I don't understand any of it. So we will consider these things and discuss it together. Now, this is the book that I'm going to be talking about, or rather talking from. And it's the first edition. What you have on the screen is the first edition of this book, which has come out in many, many editions by now. I think it's 4 editions, 5 maybe. And the most recent is a green cover. But this is my favorite cover of my favorite book. So why did I write this book? I got to be about halfway through the journey of my life. I was around 43. And I had by that time so many experiences that did not make sense to me that I thought that what I would do is simply put down the stories without trying to figure out what they meant and string them like pearls on a necklace. And at the end, I might have some idea of what they were about. And some were about ghosts, and some were about angels, and some were about the tap of intuition or just weird stories that did not make sense according to the rational, logical, scientific way that I had been brought up to believe that the world worked. And when the book was finished, I thought, oh my God, I know what this book is about. This book is about angels. But it wasn't that I sat down and said, I'm going to write about angels. I'm a storyteller, so I'm just gonna start off with stories. Shackleton had a presence that walked beside him when he was in what's called the South Pole. And the guy that climbed Everest had a presence beside him that was so intense that he offered it chocolate one day as he's taking a bite of chocolate. And he said, "Here," but there was no one there. This sense that someone is there with you, someone is guarding you. Now, the question is, can you see them? Can you recognize it? I was talking to a friend of mine back in Washington, Jack Mormon, who is a financier and very practical. And when we were talking about this before the book was published, I said, "Have you ever seen an angel, had an angel?" He said, "No, of course not. Are you crazy?" And then he said, "But you know, once I had a really weird experience. I was a little boy. I was 10 years old. I was working alone in the house on my new woodworking set, and I cut my finger right down to the bone, and blood's pouring out, and I wrapped it up in a towel. And just then the doorbell rang. When I answered the door, it was a nurse in a white uniform with a little black bag, and she said she had come to see my mother. I said my mother wasn't there, but she came in and bandaged up my hand. And then she went away. I never remembered to tell my mother anything about it. I just didn't think it was unusual. Is that what you mean by an angel? I said, yeah. Yeah, are you kidding? Okay, so oh, there's so many questions and there's so many stories. My life was saved by an angel very dramatically once when I was skiing in Val d'Isere. I tell that story in this book. And I did at that time what anyone would. I was 28 years old. I did not believe in God. And I did the most natural thing in the world. I said, well, that didn't happen. And I'm not going to go into what the angel looked like or why I thought it was an angel. It was absolutely magnificent. And I wish that I could see it again. And so, as I say, I put it away. I said, I'm just an ordinary person. These things don't happen to me. And then about a year later, I saw a ghost. Now I will tell the story of the ghost. We had just moved, my husband and I, and two little babies to New York. And I had a beautiful apartment in Brooklyn Heights. And it was a 2-story apartment with a garden. And the bedroom was walnut paneled. And next to it was a little tiny dressing room, which I took on as my room, my little office. So we had hardly moved up to this beautiful place when David, who was working at the time for the New York Times, was sent away on assignment for about 5 days. And on the second night, I was sitting about 10 o'clock at night in this little dressing room, and I was working on the sewing machine, making a dress for my little daughter, 2 years old. Adorable little brown dress, square neck, oh, enchanting. And I'm completely focused on making this dress and the sewing machine, when all of a sudden I had that creepy feeling there's someone in the room with me that you get sometimes, and you look up and there's no one. In this case, I looked up, and at the door, there was a man standing there. I say standing there, and I say a man. I knew 3 things. First of all, I could see through him, but I could see him. He was good. He was troubled. And I forget what the 3rd thing was at the moment, but let me go on with the story. He came and he walked up behind me. Oh, I turned myself back to the sewing machine. I put my head in my hands. I thought, I'm going crazy. I've been alone too much. But he came up and he walked behind me and he put his hand on my shoulder like this, with 4 fingers on one side and then thumb on the other. and it was cold as dry ice. By now, I burst out in sweat. My forehead is sweating. I knew that he meant it to comfort me, but it was no comfort whatsoever. And then he went away, and I was grateful until it suddenly dawned on me, my God, he's going to see the children in their room. And I got up and I raced to the other room. At their doorway, I was not allowed to go in. He was looking at the children. It was as if there was a hand in front of me. I could not go in. And I danced from foot to foot, really anxiously. And then I saw that he had appeared behind me in my bedroom on the window seat. And I decided to take matters into my own hands. And I said to him, listen, I don't know who you are, but it's okay if you're here, but you are not to do any harm to this beautiful apartment. And if you mess things up, you cannot stay. And while you're about here and you're going to stay, I'm going to put you in charge of the children. You're to see that no harm comes to them and no car runs them over if they run outside to the park. It's your responsibility as the children. And then he didn't say a word. He apparently did not like this, and he walked past me and down the stairs, and I followed him down the stairs, and he walked out through the closed kitchen door. I don't know why he didn't just vanish, but he walked downstairs and out very firmly. And at that moment, all my anxiety left me, and I was just walking back to my dressing room thinking, wow, that was weird. And the telephone rang, and it was my landlady. By now it's 10:30 or 10:45, and she knows very well that it's too late to call. And she tells me that she has just been thinking so hard about her husband, who loved the apartment and who was a OBGYN in the offices on the first floor, and that she couldn't stop thinking about him. The dressing room was his special little room. I did not tell her that I had just seen him. And now I wish that I had. But at the time, I thought it might be intrusive. I didn't know her well enough. So let me talk a little bit about angels. What is an angel? An angel is a messenger. We can have another slide here. I'm not accustomed to this slide business. You're going to have to be very patient with me. An angel is a messenger. The word in Greek means messenger. And it comes in any form in which the message can be received. So it comes in visions and voices and that tap of intuition that says, go here, don't go there. And we've all had that. Everybody has said, I knew I shouldn't have gone down that path, and I didn't listen. They come as dreams. They'll come as ESP, as accidents and coincidence. They'll come as animals. I have wonderful stories of animals, and I'll stop and give you an animal very quickly. A woman was on a bus late at night, alone on the bus, and she had a long path to walk. When she got out of the bus, it was dark, and it's now late at night. And this man got on the bus, and she suddenly knew, when I get off the bus, he's going to get off the bus with me and attack me as I'm going home. And she did what anybody would do. She said a prayer. And as she got off the bus, a great big white Newfoundland dog came up, put its head under her hand, and walked with her to her doorway and waited while she put the key in the latch, and then it disappeared. One of the things about angels is that they always disappear. Sometimes they will come in the form of humans. And I don't know whether they take the form of a human or whether they are acting through us, real humans, so that you may be an angel to someone else, saying just what that person needed at that moment. And you go away, not even remembering what you had said, but the other party knows that it heard something. There are 3 marks of an angel, and they are very different from a ghost. First of all, is warmth, safety, this sense, home, and your heart flying out and opening up. And secondly, they always say the same thing. Everybody knows what they say. They say, don't be afraid. Fear not. They never say, boy, look at the mess you've made yourself in, put yourself in now. They never criticize. They never argue. They always say, don't be afraid. And then the third mark of an angel is that you may not believe it, but you can't quite forget it. And the odd thing about the memory of an angel is that unlike most memories and most dreams, they become stronger with time instead of fading away. Why don't you put another picture on the screen so that people have something else to look at? I have so many wonderful stories of animals and stories of humans. And I'm going to tell a story now of an angel that comes without any embodiment at all, which is the way they usually come, accidents and coincidences. But the next 2 stories I want to tell you are about the presence. And it happened to a friend of mine named Sarah, who lives in Tennessee, and she was in Greece at the time and walking late at night on the edge of a cliff to get back to her pension, where the other children in her group were. I say children because I'm so much older. She was about 20 at the time. And I won't go into the whole story of why she suddenly was terrified. She was so frightened that she was absolutely paralyzed. On the one side is the cliff that she could fall down into the ocean, and on the other side is a mountain. And she just can't take another step forward. And suddenly she felt 2 hands come and pick her up by the ribs, pick her up, carry her along the path, drop her on the other side of the footbridge, and she got up, skinned her knees, and pounded down into the village and up to the street where her pension was, and up the steps of the pension, and burst into the room where her friends were. And they all said, Sarah, Sarah, what's happened? And she said, oh, nothing. I just got spooked out there. But one of them came up to her and said, no, Sarah, tell me. You are shining with light. You have seen God. Tell me. Years passed, and one day, Sarah, now back in the United States and older, was raped. And all during her rape, she kept thinking, now my guardian angel will save me. Now my guardian angel will save me. And no guardian angel saved her. We talked about this a lot, Sarah and I. And it was my feeling that we humans have free will, and although the spiritual dimension can do everything, including change the physical laws so that one car will pass through another one without killing the passengers. It can change time and space. It can do anything. but it cannot interfere with our human free will. And so the robber has free will to rob or attack with a knife or shoot you with a gun. The angel might deflect the bullet, but it cannot stop the human from. But Sarah said, no, that was not the reason. She said, the reason was, I think, she said, because I needed to learn to forgive more deeply and to love more deeply. I want to tell one more story and then I'm going to open it up. This happened to a friend of mine named Nan, who is now dead, I think. And in the new year of the millennium, 2000, she and her husband and her brother-in-law and her sister went to their West Virginia house to celebrate the new year of the millennium. So it's deep winter, December 31st of just before 2000, 1999 or whatever it is. And it started to snow. So at 10 or 11 o'clock at night, because they were waiting for midnight, they decided to get a start on the snow and go out and brush the sidewalk. So they're out there with our brooms, and suddenly down the street off to their left, they see a man walking along in the snow. I didn't say that they always seem to have some kind of ordinariness about them, a quirky baseball hat, a plaid lumberjacket shirt, and he's wearing a lumberjacket shirt. And he's walking along completely absorbed in what he was thinking about. He does not look at them as he passes. And they reach out to talk to him and they say, where are you going and where have you come from? And he hardly answers at all. Where are you going? He answered, not far. And then he walked on and they continued brushing the snow. And he turned a corner and vanished. He vanished around the corner. I don't mean that he vanished in thin air, but he vanished around the corner. So they kept on sweeping. And then they were so struck by this weird man walking down the street of this little West Virginia town that they put down their brooms and they began to follow his footsteps, which are very clear in the snow. And they go around the corner and the footsteps are there. And then suddenly the footsteps stopped. And there was no more footsteps and nothing to indicate so much as even a jump to the side. And that was a viewing by more than one person of a strange and mysterious event. I said that when my angel saved my life, that I put it away from me. I did not want to believe that such a thing could happen, because the questions that are raised are, who am I and why am I here? And are there really invisible beings diving down and intervening in our lives? And if so, if yes, then what is my responsibility? What is my responsibility to you, to myself, to God? William Blake saw angels in the trees. Johnny Cash saw angels. Many, many people have seen angels. They're often confused with ghosts, but I will tell you that ghosts are cold. Ghosts have no feet. Ghosts appear as milky ectoplasm, and they cannot stay for very long. and you do not feel any of the warmth and safety and unfathomable love that you will feel when you see an angel. So I guess we should have another slide. And I am then going to read 3 quotes, if I can find them. Oh, I just wrote down 1, 2, 3. Okay. This is what angels look like. From Dante. Their faces were living flame, their wings were gold. And for the rest, oh yeah, there, thank you. Their faces were living flame, their wings were gold. And for the rest, their white was so intense, no snow can match the white they showed. When they climbed down into that flowering rose, from rank to rank, they shared that peace and ardor which they gained with wings that fanned their side. And Black Elk, the Native American. I looked up at the clouds and 2 men were coming there head first like arrows slanting down. And as they came, they sang a sacred song and the thunder was like drumming. I will sing it for you. The song and the drumming were like this. Behold, a sacred voice is calling you. All over the sky, a sacred voice is calling. And this from a French priest named Père Lamy. Their garments are white, but with an unearthly whiteness. I cannot describe it because it cannot be compared to earthly whiteness. It is much softer to the eye. These bright angels are enveloped in a light so different from ours that by comparison, everything else seems dark. When you see a band of 50, you are lost in amazement. They seem clothed with golden plates, constantly moving like so many suns. Put on the screen the image of the man with a cloud in the sky. I know one person who takes photographs of angels. And yes, I see in the chat from Harry, is there a way to bring these experiences to us? Yes, there is. The real question is, why do they come? What brings them? I believe that what brings them is innocence. I think this is why they come to children, why they come to women more than men. Because women are allowed by our culture to be foolish and intuitive and believe intuitively in things that in our terrible, rigid, masculine culture are not allowed to men to feel. And so it's easy to deny these things. It's so easy to say, it didn't happen, or it couldn't happen to me, or I don't believe it. I think that 2 qualities are necessary, and one is innocence, and the other is wonder. But a third thing that will bring them most particularly to you is prayer. Now, thoughts are prayers. Prayer is nothing but a thought that is held in the heart. So what you're thinking is what you are praying. And if you are thinking hateful, depressed, distressed, unhappy thoughts, those are your prayers. And so generous is the universe that it will give you whatever you want. So if you want hate and distress and despair and depression, it will give it to you. And if you want goodness and wonder and love, it will give it to you. prayers do not have to just be clasped hands. Now I am praying. Watch your thoughts, and they will draw the angels to you. I'm going to stop. There's so much that I have to say that you can just stop me because I can go on for far too long.
Thank you, Sophie. Thank you so much. That was really beautiful and a great way to begin. Yeah, a lot of people are just thanking you silently here. Sophie, our first question that came up in the chat is so interesting to me because it speaks to this kind of nexus between angels and also religion. And the person who asked is Rachel Naismith, who said, "You haven't mentioned life after death. And if a person is an atheist and doesn't believe in life after death, is it possible to believe in ghosts or angels?" And she's wondering, have you ever met someone like that? So could you give us some insights?
I have another story for you.
Great.
A year or so ago, I got a telephone call from a woman in California. I'll make this story really short. It's a brilliant story, but I'll shorten it. And she was applying for a job as a nanny with a movie star, because she's in Hollywood. It was Kate Hudson, as a matter of fact. And when she arrived at Kate's house, she found that Kate was on a podcast of someone. And so she was asked to go in the living room and wait. In the living room, she found a monk in a monk goth costume with a belt around his waist and a little hood. And she thought, well, this is Hollywood. I guess he has some gig. But he behaved so strangely to her, saying things like, "Oh, you really can see me. Of course I can see you," she said. "Back off." Anyway, they fell into conversation. It turned out that this guy was the spirit guide for the man being interviewed by Kate in the podcast.
Wow.
The man being interviewed by Kate was a medical intuitive. And the monk says, the medical intuitive doesn't know anything. I tell him, and then he knows what to say and repeats it. But he can't see me the way you can. No one can see me the way you can. I don't know why you can see me the way you are. Well, anyway, they go into conversation, and finally she says to him, "What's it like being dead?" We're back to Rachel's question. And he said, "Oh, that's a very complicated question." "I'll tell you what," he said. "Next fall, when you go to visit your grandmother in Wisconsin," this is taking place in January. She had no intention of visiting her grandmother in Wisconsin in the fall. "Next fall, when you go to visit your grandmother in Wisconsin, go upstairs to her bedroom, and on the bedside table, you'll find a book by Sophy Burnham called A Book of Angels. And in it, it has the best description of what it's like after death that any of us know." So she called me up to tell me this. You have to buy the book to find it out.
Fantastic. I want somebody to help me know what I'm going to be doing next fall. Could you please ask them to come over here?
I need someone to tell me. Say it again.
I'm joking. I just so interesting that, you know, there are angels who can help you figure out the next step. But
of course there are. It's called intuition.
Okay. I'm getting it. I'm understanding it more. Sophie, we have another question. Speaking of death, how do you see reincarnation and our purpose here on Earth?
I don't have any idea. I believe in reincarnation on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and on Wednesdays I don't. And it's all we're not supposed to know what happens on the other side.
Okay.
But I do know that it does not end with the death of the physical body. This body of mine, this chassis I live in, is getting older. It's getting rusty. Soon I will shed it. Well, maybe not so soon, maybe 20 years I will shed it, but I will exist. And the ghosts that I have seen retain their personality, retain their understanding. And as far as I know, what we're supposed to do is to learn to love more deeply. I think that's why we're put on the physical plane. It is very difficult being a human being. That's why we have angels and spirit guides to help us, because it's very hard to have the privilege of being in a physical form, to have hands to embrace each other with and lips to kiss each other with, and be separated by our physical form. Angels can sort of merge like water, but we can't do that. And I don't know what happens after death, and neither does anyone. I don't know what an angel is.
You've just written about them.
Matter, I don't know what a tulip is. I don't know anything.
Sophie,
Can you create a tulip? I could never do it.
Sophie, Jacqueline Balance asked, do your angels have anything to advise on the subject of climate change?
Never ask them. You know, well, just there, I sat and asked very quickly, and the answer I get back is what the angels always say: don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. We're taking care of this, but you're taking care of this. Humans are infinitely inventive. We can do it if we're not afraid. If only we could live as if we were not afraid. At a time, I mean, first of all, turn off the TV. Don't look at the TV news, because it's designed to make you afraid. There is a question from Sean. And that we can give that. Oh, we can. Oh, yes. Sean has asked me to tell something that I told him some years ago. If you're in trouble, if you have a meeting with your boss or with a job that you want, send your angels to talk to their angels before the event, and to work things out at the spiritual level, at the highest level, for the highest good for everyone involved. And you'll discover that the meeting goes brilliantly, harmoniously, swiftly, easily. It's always about harmony and love with angels. And I have come to believe that even the things that are really bad for me are on my side. And the things that are good, that I thought that I wanted so much, always end up with a crown of thorns. So.
Sophie, Elizabeth asked, what encounter do you remember that keeps you filled with joy? Do you have a story for us?
What? Say the question again.
What encounter do you remember that keeps you filled with joy?
I think I'll answer the question in a different way. I was asked the other day, if you had one moment to live in your life again, what would it be? And without hesitation, I said it would be the moment that my life was saved by an angel, that I saw the angel. But your question brings up something that's slightly different, which is of just being alive, being awake, being alert to every minute, to right now. I mean, what an incredible privilege to be here with you all of you, right now, talking about something so precious and sacred and holy and intimate, the most intimate thing we can talk about. And that we're all here doing it, and the sun is shining outside my window, and the grass is green, and it is beautiful. It's just beautiful. Every moment. Can I hold on to that every moment? I don't think I've answered your question, Elizabeth, but it's the best I can do.
Sophie, to go in a different direction, Mark Carpel, who often goes in different directions, asked, where do demons fit in, if anywhere?
Oh, yeah, they do. I don't like to talk about demons because I don't like to draw them to me, but I have had 3 experiences with demons, or with the demonic, or with the dark side. And of course, you can't have the light without the dark. We see the demonic in so much on this physical plane. That's why it's hard to be here. I mean, I think that alcohol and drugs are expressions of the demonic. I think that war and violence and AK-15s in everyone's hand, it's part of the demonic. I say that I've had 3 experiences. One was where I was just lying in bed reading a book, not thinking about anything at all. And all of a sudden, what? There's this thing sitting on me. And it had little claws. It was dark, 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 blacker than a telephone black. And I was so paralyzed with this thing trying to get inside me that I could not move anything, except I managed at a certain point to move the tip of my finger like that. And with the tip of my finger, I made the sign of the cross, and it was gone. But that imp, or whatever it was the complete expression of fear and loneliness. And I don't mean solitude, I mean horrible, horrible, frightening loneliness. And I felt afterwards very sorry for it. We ought to be praying for the demons. Surely they can go into the light. I don't want that darkness. I don't want that loneliness. I don't want that fear. And why it came, I have no idea. After that, I wore a sign of the cross for a while, a little cross on the necklace, because I did not want it back again. It's not something to play with. It's not something to ask about. And don't, whatever you are doing, any of you, please do not get engaged in magic. There's such a difference between magic and the spiritual world. And I'm going to go off on a little rant here for a minute, where magic is where you're trying to have power yourself. And in the spiritual realm, you're giving it away all the time, all the time. All that we're supposed to do as spiritual beings is to love each other, not ask for power.
Sophie,
Yeah.
you're almost prescient, because the next question that came up is, what's the difference between angels and spirit guides?
Yeah, I don't have any idea. The spirit guides might be angels. They might be lesser beings that take the stuff to angels. I think angels are a different species. I know they're different from humans. Possibly we evolve into angels on the other side. Possibly, in fact, I'm pretty sure that when we die, we have work to do, and some of the work is probably to care for people still here. I think that my father, for example, is caring for one of my grandchildren. And I couldn't prove it. I just had a feeling.
Mhm.
That's it. Maybe it's not right at all. Maybe it's all my imagination.
Mhm.
But it makes me happy to think it. I like to think that Daddy is taking care of him.
Great. You've touched on religion and a cross a couple of times, but I was wondering if you have any thoughts about different religions, and how different theologies and different theological philosophers have talked about spirits and angels and ghosts and all of these kinds of beings that aren't exactly tangible but are with us.
Yeah. I was really interested that I have not found a religion that did not have some sense of a higher dimension, a higher spiritual dimension. I found in the Metropolitan Museum of Art a little sculpture, tiny little sculpture. It was a Buddhist sculpture from about 600 BC of an angel, a winged cherub. Of course, Islam, and in fact, all of the three monotheistic religions have great angels, and the Hindus believe in not quite what we call angels, apsaras. The Zoroastrians have Parashta, and these are kind of angels. Often they are winged. Why do angels have wings? They certainly don't need wings to flap their shoulder blades and fly. They are swift as thought. I don't think they need wings at all. I think that is something that we humans place on them to indicate swift as thought and swift as flight. And because feathered beings are very beautiful, feathered birds, beautiful. We would like to fly. Maybe we have memories of flying. I think that every religion has this sense of something greater. That's why they try to make it into a religion. Someone has a mystical experience, and then he says, oh, I know, I was fasting at that time and making 5 prostrations a day. And so if you fast and prostrate 5 times a day, you'll have a mystical experience. And of course, then it becomes gelled into a church, and then it becomes a bureaucracy, and then you lose everything except the bow 5 times a day and pray. But you've lost the spiritual center.
I just got a question from someone who said, are most of the angels that you've known, are they individuals that you knew, or are they people, or do they represent someone who is completely unrelated to you?
What a wonderful question. What a great question. I don't think I've ever been asked that question.
Well, thank Sarah Backrack for that.
Completely unknown to me. When I am giving a psychic reading to people, I will sometimes see their angels behind them. I don't know the angels. My angel, the one that saved my life, I'd never seen in my life before, but you know what? I knew him deeply. And when, well, very briefly, he saved me from falling off a cliff when I was skiing. And I stood up and looked in his eyes, and his eyes were pools of love. Oh my God. And just before he had come, just before he stopped me, the sky was blazing in miraculous colors that I'd never seen before, and my heart leaped out of my body and thought, home, and it doesn't matter if I die, I'm yes. And then he stopped, and here were these eyes that looked at me with such profound, unconditional love. I spent the next week looking for him, but of course he vanished. And I don't know.
Beautiful.
But no one I know. Absolutely not people that I know.
Sophie, I'm mindful of the clock, and I'm also mindful of the angels who help take care of you. So I want to make sure that people know that if there are any more. Yes, please.
This before we close, but go ahead and finish. I just wanted to make sure that you know I'm going to take one more minute.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure if anyone has any more questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. I hope we can get to them. And if you can, just put any gratitude or love that you have for the kind of message that Sophie's bringing us in the chat. I'm sure she'll appreciate to read those later on. So go ahead, Sophie.
Okay, I'm going to read from this book, from page 187, the most important paragraph in this book. And it relates to Swedenborg. Swedenborg was a 17th century mystic, an engineer. He invented the machine gun. He was the engineer who was in charge of the Swedish Board of Mines. And he devoted himself for the last 30 years of his life to spiritual investigations and clairvoyance, from which come the Swedenborg churches that are all over the country. At a time when most churches were saying that God was a punishing God, he was saying that God was loving. And it was a huge, huge change at that time. So his angels stayed with him always, whispering and singing to him. And they can to you. I mean, this is what I'm saying. We all have angels. If you listen, you will hear them. Swedenborg writes of their communicating spiritually by thoughts flashing into his mind. And in one of these instructions, he learned that angels look on all events as proceeding from God, not as men or evil spirits do, who want everything to come out their way. And when it doesn't, give way to doubt or even deny the existence of God, but rather in an outpouring of faith. His angels repeated again and again that we poor beings should not worry about the future, but only trust to providence. Now here's the sentence, listen. For providence will bring all things that we desire, not necessarily while we desire them, but yet If it be for their good, they obtain them afterward when not thinking of them. If it be for their good, they obtain them afterward when not thinking of them. That means you get all your heart's desires when you no longer care.
Ah, beautiful, beautiful. Folks, we're getting close to the 4 o'clock mark, and I know some people are going to have to leave. So I wanted to let you know we're going to just go over a few minutes because there's one more question here about ketamine that I think a number of people are interested in. But I wanted to let you know, if you have to get off, that this is our last event for the spring, and we'll be taking the summer off to recharge, rejuvenate, and get our acts together. And we'll be back in September. We have a great lineup coming up of wonderful speakers. So if you've any interest in coming back in the fall, please do. We love seeing all of you. And I'm going to say a bit of a thank you now, and I'll thank her again. But while you're all here, if anyone wants to put any thank yous in the chat, I know Sophie would be just honored to hear that. So if you need to leave and hop off, it's just about 4 o'clock. Thank you so much for being with us. And if you can hang on for one more minute, Sophie, I got to ask you about psychedelics. So somebody asked about ketamine and other kinds of therapy with the judicious use of psychedelics. Do you feel that they could be a doorway to expanded perception? Many of us lived through the 60s, and maybe some of us even experimented back then. But now there's a lot of research being done with a lot of care and thought behind it. And we were wondering if you think that this could also be a pathway toward that sense of overwhelming love of all beings and lack of fear.
I do. I do think it is. Now, I have never done it. I'm kind of afraid and also intrigued by these. I think it should never be done without a guide. Unfortunately, some of the people that I know who have done ayahuasca and gone on spirit quests and things, it doesn't seem to last. They have a moment, they remember things, but it doesn't change their personality. It isn't that they're changed cellularly and profoundly and they seem to go back. They have a moment, they get it. Only Timothy Leary is the perfect example of someone, Ram Dass, who did change. But mind you, he also had an Indian guru, and he was doing the mantra, and he was being given a great deal of spiritual instruction from a higher guide. So I can't answer the question because I have no experience of it myself, but I'm pretty intrigued by it, and I think it's worth exploring.
Right. Well, that's a wonderful way to end. Keep exploring, Sophy Burnham. We love your explorations. Thank you so much for being with us today. It was truly an honor to moderate this session, and I could see lots of people are clapping and shaking their hands and just sending a lot of love to you. Thank you, everyone, for being with us. If you're interested in volunteering or if you want to donate, we are always interested in having more people with us. If you're here for the first time and you like what you see, please come back again in the fall. And with that, I'm going to sign off. Thanks again, everyone. Thank you, Sophie.
People for coming and for letting me talk. Beautiful.